Hi, my name is Rianne Butler, and I'm here with Melissa Braverman. Melissa is a dating anthropologist and relationships writer who blogs about her dating discoveries at SingleGalNYC.com. Melissa has been quoted in such outlets as the Associated Press, the New York Post, and the Wall Street Journal. She works as a lifestyle publicist and is currently at work on a memoir about her dating adventures across the US. Welcome, Melissa. My first question is, as a native New Yorker and seasoned expert in love and relationships in the Big Apple, how have you seen the dating scene in New York change over the past few years?
In terms of how I've seen the dating scene change, I think one of the biggest changes has resulted from the internet, of course. I think over the last 5 to 7 years, there's been a lot more communicating by text message, by instant messaging, and I've noticed, the tradition of picking up the phone and having a conversation with someone that you're just starting to get to know doesn't seem to happen as frequently, and I think that's a shame. And what ends up happening is there's a lot more back and forth online through text messaging, and I think it delays that process of getting to know someone in a more intimate way.
So, in March 2010, you embarked on the Great Dating Blitz, exploring single life on an 8-week, 8-city tour of the US. Did you find that men approach dating differently in different states?
I don't know if they necessarily approach dating differently, but I think there was definitely a difference in attitude towards dating and relationships. I would say that New York is probably the toughest dating market in the U.S., which is, I'm sure, no surprise to anyone. But I think once you step outside of New York, people tend to, I think, settle down at a younger age. Here in New York, when people are in their 30s, they're still very focused on their careers, on their friends, on other things. But I found that in most of the other cities I visited, by the time people were in their late 20s and early 30s, they were much more receptive to the idea of settling down and much more interested in finding that, connection and that relationship that's going to be the lasting relationship.
Last year, you also did a European dating blitz. What were the differences in dating habits between European countries?
I'd say the biggest difference that I noticed between dating in Europe and dating here is Europeans are much more open and liberal about sex, but conversely much more traditionally minded when it comes to dating. They don't have the same vocabulary that we do here in the U.S., that there are certain rules you follow on first date, second, third dates. That doesn't really happen over there. There, it's just more about getting to know someone, and if that means having sex when you meet them or if you pick them up in the bar, it's not considered, as big of a deal, I guess, as it would be here. We're more puritanical about sex, but I would say Europeans are much more traditionally minded when it comes to relationships. Here, you don't assume that you're exclusive with someone unless you have the conversation about it. Whereas in Europe, people assume that you're exclusive once you start spending time together. So there's definitely big differences, both in terms of attitudes towards relationships and sex.
You describe yourself as a single gal in the city. What are the typical qualities of the modern, working, single female?
Well, I think certainly each woman is an individual, but what I've experienced and what I've seen with my friends is I would say the average single gal in the city is a woman who's, really involved in city life and taking advantage of all the culture and entertainment that you have at your fingertips in a great city like New York, and really engaged in her relationships with her friends and developing her career, and is just, at least speaking for myself, I like to think of myself as a pretty well-rounded person. And of course with that, comes the challenge of carving out time for dating and really making sure that it's a priority and it's not something that just falls by the wayside.
Okay, so then what is your advice for other single girls in the city who are exasperated at the lack of dating potential?
I would say I completely empathize because I've certainly been there, and I think I am still there last time I checked. But I think the key thing is to not let yourself get into a rut and kind of, listen to that negative voice in your head. It's really all about, getting out of your comfort zone and trying different things and trying to, broaden your social circles. I think a lot of times it's very easy to, to stay in what's familiar and stay with your circle of friends and do the same things you always do when you go out. But as I said, I'm a big believer in getting out of your comfort zone, whether it's taking a class in something you've always wanted to learn more about or going to a different part of town. I think it's really important to do that and to at least feel like, you're not just doing the same old. And, like the saying goes, don't do the same thing and expect a different result. So to the extent that you can mix it up a little bit, I think, even if you don't meet Mr. Right, you'll have fun. And that's what it's all about. I think a lot of times people treat dating like a job, and the whole idea is to have fun with it.
Definitely. For you, what are the negatives for online dating?
Oh gosh, if we're only having a 10-minute conversation, I don't know that I can list them all, but I think probably my number one complaint about online dating goes back to what I was saying before, that I think it to a certain extent delays forging that connection, because it's very easy to keep things at a distance, to be impersonal, because you're going back and forth through email, through texting, through instant messaging. I just saw a girl on Twitter today say, is it wrong for me to not want to give my email to someone before I go on a date with them, someone that she's met online? And my feeling is, isn't that the whole point, to take it offline and find out if you do in fact have real life chemistry? So I think what ends up happening a lot of the time is people develop more of a shopping around versus a settling down mentality from doing online dating. I kind of liken online dating to gambling, that there's the few that hit the jackpot and find that special someone, and then there's the rest of us poor schlubs.
Yeah, definitely with you on that one. You were selected as one of New York City's most eligible Latinas. Who is your most eligible Latino?
Well, gosh, there's so many to choose from, but I'd say the one that comes to my mind is the Yankees, A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez. Although the thing about him is I think he knows he's very eligible, and based upon his short attention span in terms of dating, he's probably not the ideal catch, but certainly when it comes to being an eligible Latino, he would be towards the top of the list.
On to what you think about friends later becoming lovers. Is it worth trying, or do you think it's a recipe for disaster?
I think it's a little bit of both. I've tried it myself, and it didn't work out. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is, if it doesn't work out romantically, you lose the friendship too. And of course, the ideal basis for any relationship is friendship. You always hear from people that are in successful, committed relationships, I'm with my best friend. Having said that, if you are going to get involved romantically with someone who is just a friend, you need to know that you are taking a risk, that if it doesn't work out, then you lose the friendship as well. But the flip side is nothing ventured, nothing gained. And if there is really a strong pull towards trying, a romantic relationship, then, you also have to follow your heart.
Which can be difficult to do. Do you believe that men and women now share an equal playing field when it comes to making the first move?
Yes and no. I think it depends where you are geographically. That's certainly something that I learned from all of my travels across the U.S., across Europe. In Europe, for example, if a woman approaches, she's either a hooker or she's, looking to have sex. So it's very different in Europe. Making the first move as a woman is a much more loaded thing versus here. I think it is considered more acceptable. It's more, you can approach a guy and just be flirting with him. It doesn't necessarily mean you want to have sex with him, you want to marry him. So I think here, generally, yes, it's more of a level playing field as far as making the first move. But I did notice, once I stepped outside of New York and I visited some other cities in the U.S., that women were still reluctant to do it, that it's not quite as accepted. The smaller cities you go to as you get to other parts of the U.S., like the Midwest, where there is more of that traditional mindset, I would say still 9 times out of 10, it's the guy that's making the first move.
Do you think this is because in those areas guys are more likely to make the first move so women don't need to?
I absolutely would agree with that. Yeah, I think here in New York, the reality is we have a very lopsided male-female ratio, and to a large extent, men have the kid in a candy store mentality. So they don't really have to do the heavy lifting because they know that when it comes to numbers, they definitely are on the favorable end of the spectrum.
Which is just a little unfair. It is that time of the year again. To help other single girls in the city, can you offer any New Year's resolutions for 2012 dating?
I am a big fan of the New Year's resolution. I think there's something about the turning of a calendar page that gives us all the chance to make a fresh start, try new things, reinvent ourselves. And I know for myself, one of the things that I've put at the top of the list is to, as I said before, get out of my comfort zone. And what does that mean? If there are dating websites that haven't worked, try new ones. If you've always wanted to try speed dating, give it a chance. I think going back to what I was saying before, it's so important to not do the same things over and over again and just hope eventually, okay, maybe something different is going to happen. So I would say, if there's one resolution to put on your list for 2012, it's get out there and try something involving meeting people that you've never done before. All of my travels, I heard so many women say to me, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to try speed dating. So do it. And it's so amazing to me that we live in an age where people have no problems connecting on the internet and interacting with strangers. But the idea of interacting face to face with a bunch of strangers suddenly becomes this intimidating thing. And I'm kind of trying to start a grassroots movement here when it comes to speed dating because I've done it about a dozen times and I've always met really outgoing, smart, interesting guys. I even got a couple of boyfriends out of the experience. And I just think, to the extent that you can really, as I said, get out of your comfort zone and try something new, the rewards are so great, and not just in terms of finding someone to connect with romantically, but what it does for your attitude and your perspective on things. So that would be my number one tip is get out of your comfort zone, try something new, and there's no downside to it.
Why not? It has been an absolute pleasure to have a talk with you, Melissa. Thank you for your time and good luck with your future dating adventures. I'm sure as a dating anthropologist, you'll have plenty of them.